Hello, welcome back to Unschooled Theology. I am one of your hosts, Derick. With me is Evan. Hello, sir.
How are we doing, sir?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Doing wonderful.
All right, good. All right, so we're going to do a final wrap-up episode here on the story of Genesis 1 slash a few verses from Genesis 2, the initial creation story of the Bible here. And I want to narrow in one major takeaway that, at least for me, that I take from Genesis 1. And it's sort of the takeaway that overwhelms everything else that we've pulled from that chapter. And that is the idea that humanity was created for the purpose of stewardship of the earth. And that, to me, and I think this is important, is that is a responsibility that hasn't gone away, right? This is not like the don't eat pork thing, if you will, that disappeared, right? There's at no point in the New Testament or anything that we see this responsibility to subdue the earth, right, and tame it. There's no point where we see that that's wiped out or gone away. So for me, I look at it and I say it's the kind of thing we can't do perfectly, right? Although after Christ's return, that is the kind of thing, in the new heaven and the new earth, if you will, that I assume that we will be doing, and we'll have the opportunity to do it perfectly. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a duty to attempt to do so right now. And after all, I mean, this is the reason for man's existence. So it would make sense that we should probably, do what we're here for.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I think Christians understand this, because even though our sins are forgiven, we still understand we have a duty to behave morally, right? We still have a duty to, follow the 10 Commandments, if you will, in terms of that kind of moral behavior. And this, to me, is very much related to all that. In fact, I think I would argue that the 10 Commandments emerge in a way from this very idea, actually, of how we should properly live within the world and have stewardship over it all. So go ahead.
It strikes me as interesting that it might get us closer to the purpose of the telling of the creation narrative. Is that if you demonstrate to somebody all the work that has gone into creating something, oftentimes that's a way of telling someone, take care of this. Like, I have worked very, very, very hard on this. Now I'm passing off to you. It is your responsibility to take care of the thing that I have put so much effort and energy into. And so I think it's interesting that it concludes with stewardship, and that's something that is an overarching theme.
Yeah. I mean, a part of me thinks that actually, since we were created for stewardship, the way we can demonstrate our honest belief and appreciation for the salvation, right? After our dalliances with sin, is that we return to this original purpose, right? As we get in next here to Adam and Eve, and we look at the idea of sin, sin is deviation from this purpose. So in a way, this is, after we're saved, this is exactly what we should be returning to. And this is not based purely on looking at Genesis 1. Jesus did give several parables, actually, on the idea of stewardship, and celebrated stewardship itself. Obviously, parable of the talents being one that's well understood, where you're given the opportunity to foster and use this wealth, this money, the talents, and then what you do with that, is sort of how you're judged. So there's that. There's obviously the vineyard, and are you taking care of the vineyard and handling it properly and stewarding it well, while while the master is away.
Tho-
Go ahead.
Those two ones bring up really, really interesting points, because it's easy as somebody presented with something pristine and well cared for. It's easy to think my job is to just not screw it up. And that could paralyze someone. Not aside from talking about sin, which is actively destroying, it's easy to just say, I'm going to be completely apathetic. I'm going to be neutral. I'm not going to be active. I'm going to just let this thing sit because it's been designed as it is, and I'm not going to be involved. But I mean, that's even the parable of the talents attacks that idea exactly, and says, look, you're given something, make something of it.
Yeah,
that's the point.
You can't be the guy who hit him in the ground,
Exactly.
You can't be that guy.
Exactly. It's like, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to make sure that nothing goes away. I'm going to make sure that I don't touch anything. It's like, no, you're supposed to be engaged. You're supposed to actively learn how to be engaged, which is a much higher calling than just saying exist, than just saying don't screw it up. It's saying, no, make it better. I don't want to say exactly that, but something of that effect of you should be actively involved. Yeah.
So I want to say too that this obviously looks like an enormous task when we consider it on this creation level, right? That the purpose of humanity is to bring all of creation, further into this order that God establishes and steward that whole thing. So given that's obviously beyond the scope of any one of us, I think the question is, well, where do I begin? Is something that, again, we're not getting an answer from this particular passage. I think we'll get to that later on, but I think it is worth discussing it here. Because for me, the way I've looked at this, the more that I've thought about this passage and really made this idea of stewardship a much greater emphasis in my thinking. For me, it's you start with the one bit of creation that has been most clearly given to you and that you have the most influence and control over, which would be, frankly, your own body, right? Your personage, right? That is the earthly part that you've been given to oversee and to manage. And so I've started there, if you will. But the principles that I sort of learned there as I try to manage this vessel better and steward this thing that I've been given better, those principles, I think, extend out even further from there. And the more I've sort of looked at my own personal health and those kind of things and how to, again, take care of this physical vessel, the more I think I've grown to understand the idea of stewardships in regards to everything from environmental issues to societal concerns and even, technological issues. All of that built out from starting at this most basic level where I have the most influence, the most control, because when it comes to those larger concerns, I don't have as much influence, obviously. But as I work on those areas where I do have influence, you start to see small ways you might have influence extending further out from that. But I just, for me personally, I think it makes more sense to start at that micro level rather than, hey, I'm going to go fix the environment first, right? That's the thing I'm going to do. I don't think that's the right place to start from. Start from where you do have influence and control. Where you can be the most impactful, I guess.
Start in a smaller place. Yeah, that's reasonable. And that's again, I think that's something that I don't know if we can pull from the text or can pull from anywhere in scripture, but it does, I don't know, reason seems to back that up.
Well, I think we will in time once we get to look a little bit closer at things like the law, right? Because the law, so much of it is personal in nature, right? And it's about you taking care of your personal individual self first and foremost. And then how do you, what are the right behaviors you must exhibit first sort of on your own, and then within society as well, and then broader connections to even animals and those kind of things. I think we'll see that once we get closer in terms of the law. And then I also think we can pull a little bit of that idea from, if we look at the teachings of Jesus, right? The teachings of Jesus are all very much about how to approach life yourself, not so much what should you be doing in terms of influencing other people, or trying to enact some type of influence and control over the rest of the world. It starts very personally, the Sermon on the Mount, obviously the Beatitudes, all of these things. There's a lot of inward personal, improve yourself, make yourself the most capable vessel that you can within this creation, and then from there you'll work outwards. So I think we see that a little bit there. That's sort of pulling a broad idea out of these micro lessons that we see in the law, and then Jesus as the fulfillment of the law.
Yeah, you can potentially pull it from Abraham, and potentially even the idea of Noah too. Noah's a little bit broader, but the idea that Noah as an individual choosing to pursue God and following God is able to preserve
Save
humanity.
The world.
Yeah, preserve humanity in the face of everything.
Not just humanity, the animals as well, too.
The animals
right?
as well,
all creation, is preserved through one man choosing to handle himself rightly.
Oh, yeah. It sounded like the start of a movie there for a second.
Yeah.
One man.
They tried to make that.
Yeah, that's true.
It didn't work.
That's for another episode. There's also I think the Abraham story is a little bit is even more powerful, I think, because the idea that an individual choosing to follow God and follow the things that God tells him to do begins with, you can watch the process grow. And so you have initially Abraham with his wife following God, and then that becomes his son, and then that becomes another generation, and then that soon becomes a kingdom, and that becomes a people of God. And so it's out of this one single individual choosing to follow God and what God's asking him to do, you see a whole nation following.
And of course, Jesus is one individual too.
And not doing it effectively always. Correct. Yeah.
So at that line of individuals choosing to follow God culminates in the individual person of Christ, So it seems from a number of different sources, we could look at it very much as, hey, start with yourself, right? Start with the plank in your own eye, and we often forget that verse. It's handle the plank in your own eye so that you might help someone with the speck in theirs, right? So there is in that a component of then move on and help fix the world, help others, right? But first you start with yourself. That's where the process begins.
Yeah.
So
this is you can see this occasionally with people who've had who have had success in, I think of business frequently, the realm of business, that oftentimes people who are over the age of like 50 and have had success in business, and this is anecdotal and personal experience, but my experience on the whole has been, if they find someone who is wanting to get to whatever they are at, they are very enthusiastic to help. And they really do
take on that mentorship role.
They want to help people. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Because they've worked through all of the planks in order to get to wherever they are at. That's not to say everybody's perfect in those positions. But generally people who have gotten to a certain place, they tend to want to look back and say, who can I help in order to, who's wanting to get to this place as well. So yeah, that seems the appropriate way of going about things, is figuring out how to clean yourself up.
Yeah.
All
right. So this is an idea we're going to return to very regularly, because as I said, from Genesis 1, it seems to be the purpose for which humanity exists. So we'll come back to it for sure. And in part two, I want to emphasize it because, frankly, as someone who's attended a number of different churches and looked at the Christian world from within and from without, in a way, as well, never feeling fully a part of that. I think it is a subject that is not given an appropriate priority level within the church these days. So for that reason as well, we'll probably keep coming back to it and show how the Bible, I think, reinforces this idea over and over again. So that's going to be where we're going to wrap on this first story from Genesis. So next we will be previewing the story of Adam and Eve, and we have several episodes to sort of set some framework for how we're going to approach that story, because there is a lot. There's a lot there, and how it's been approached over the years has been very interesting and worth examining. So we'll have a few episodes on that before we actually dig in, to looking verse or paragraph by paragraph, something similar to what we did here on Genesis 1. So that is coming up. And until then, be sure to like, subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit us up with an email, unschooledtheology@protonmail.com, and leave a comment. Oh, and I never throw this in there, but if you're interested, I do some writing over at brokenwindowmedia.com. It's not necessarily always religiously based, although I do have a series there called Religion, Church, and State that's going on that you could check out. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I usually have a new article up every week over there as well. So check that out. But until then, we'll see you next time.